Hello and welcome to the webinar. This is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev, and today we are going to talk about the counterattack, when and how counterattack. Okay, please let me know if the sound and video quality is good and you can hear me. Yeah, looks like everything is working. Okay, Nimish, please stop asking such questions. Yes, of course, I got your email. We are not talking about it. So yes, the sound is clear. Thank you. First of all, let me introduce myself to the newcomers. I'm a FIDE master from Russia. My current rating is 2252. So I live in Novosibirsk. This is the central part of Russia. It's quite cold here today and actually in the winter. And I conduct these webinars. This is webinar number 71. So I will already conduct 70 webinars devoted to different topics. You can find almost all of them on my YouTube channel. But as for this concrete webinar, there will be no recording available. So you can only attend this webinar and watch it in live. And yeah, I think that's it. Guys who attend this webinar for the first time, please let me know where are you from and what's your elo. Oh, you can tell me what's your feeder or just chess.com elo. Okay, Vishy Anand is from India. Actually, Vishy, I was thinking your rating is more than 2700. Stan, what's the problem? Can you please explain it? Intermediate master here for the first time. Okay, it's 1300. Okay, my video is... Okay, I see. Guys, please let me know if you experience the problems watching the video. By the way, I'm going to make a few moves on the board. Please let me know if you can see them. Okay, so I think the problem is on your side. So some of you don't see the moves. Okay, so for those, I recommend watching the webinar on YouTube. Okay, I'm going to show. So first of all, this is my profile on chess.com, and you can send me a friend request. If so, you're unlikely to miss any of my announcements, like my new YouTube videos, my new webinars, maybe tournament announcements, simuls, and so on. And this is our educational group, Tricks of Chess, where I'm going to publish the tournament results. So, for example, there is a tournament that is running right now, and these are the pairings for the third round. Tomorrow I'll publish the pairings for the fourth round. However, you can also find the webinar. So if there is a problem attending the webinar, you can find the recording here. No, it's actually not a recording, but a stream. And currently it's available on YouTube, but I'm going to delete it in a few hours after we finish the webinar. So how to find my YouTube channel? So you just click here, for example, and this is my YouTube channel. You see, currently I'm live with this webinar. This is the link for my YouTube channel. And finally, my website, where you can find some helpful educational courses, and of course, my blog. Anyway, I'm going to send you the link to my blog. Fine. Okay. I'm now switching to my chess-based software. Okay, so who else do we have today? So there is Anna Henriquez from United Kingdom, about 1,000. Okay, I see. So a few people from India, of course. Okay, guys, if you like my webinars, you can invite your friends to join. Why not? So our task is at least to have 50 attendees coming. Now it's only 31, which is quite low. No, at some webinars we had 77, at some 50, but today it's only 31. I believe the number of more attendees will join soon. However, let's start. Let's talk about the counterattack. When and how to initiate a counterattack. So first of all, what counterattack means? If your king is under attack, you can do several things to defend. Of course, you can just defend your king passively. You can open the position in the center. You can trade pieces. You can try to find a counterplay on the other side of the board or maybe on the center. And you can also counterattack your opponent. But you can do such a strategy only in case if the enemy king is weak. Especially it happens when you both are castled to the opposite side of the board. So you, for example, to the king side, your opponent to the queen side, and you are trying to initiate a pawn march on the side where the enemy king is. Try to get rid of his pawn cover, open the files, and attack his king with your rooks. No, this is counterattack. So if you believe the king is weak, you may initiate a counterattack. How to realize that the king is weak? So first of all, you should imagine the position where your pieces should be located to be able to deliver some problems to your to the enemy king. And if it may happen on the board, then yes, you may initiate a counter-attack. And your second step is to find how to get these pieces to the squares that you desire to be able to deliver problems to your to the enemy king. So what we are going to do, we are going to analyze 3 games today. So this is the first game which was played in Ruy Lopez. Actually, I should flip the board. This is the game played between Vladimir Tukmakov and Josif Dorfman. Let's start with it. It illustrates how black successfully counter-attacked. No, we shouldn't go through the opening, but just quickly, it's Ruy Lopez. Castle, b5, bishop b3, and bishop b7 was played. If you remember, I told you to play in this position. I told you to play bishop to e7. Then he plays rook e1. You play b5. Bishop go there. You castle. They play c3, which is the main line, and then d5. So this line is called Marshall counterattack, and I've already conducted a webinar devoted to this topic. So we sacrifice the pawn to e5, rook takes e5, and then Frank Marshall considered that knight f6 is the best move here. However, nowadays grandmasters discovered that c6 is the best option. So the idea is to attack like that: bishop d6 and queen h4. How to gain the pawn? You don't need to gain the pawn. You have a full compensation for that pawn. And moreover, so what's your level? I believe even at your level, 1800. No, let me quickly show you. c6 first. There, rook moves, queen h4. So g3 has to be played. It's a strong attack anyway. If h3, then you can sacrifice on h3, and that will be a deadly attack. So the best move in this position is to sacrifice the exchange by playing rook e5, actually. So you don't need to gain the pawn. This is a strong attack, and I think white is likely to sacrifice the pawn back to be able to avoid some real problems. Well, this is what I suggest. However, Josif Dorfman played another move and decided to play another strategy. So he played b5 earlier, bishop b3, bishop b7, rook e1, bishop c5, c3 castle. White played d4, and bishop retreated to b6. Now, the question for you is, what if white captures on e5? They can capture with the pawn or with the knight. So let's say if the pawn captures on e5, how black should reply? Yes, exactly. If pawn captures, it's knight g4, double attack, and black is fine. He gains the pawn back and gets a slightly better position. What if knight captures on e5 first? Then knight g5 won't work. So if knight takes e5, then knight takes knight. This is how we open the bishop and can capture on e4 with our knight and also threaten the f2. Black is also fine in this position. So bishop b6, bishop g5 was played by white in this position, h6, bishop h4, rook e8, and here white decided to play one of the common plans, a4, to undermine the b5 pawn. d6, a takes b5, they decided to trade rooks. Queen d3, threatening the b5 pawn, but knight a5. So who can tell me why it's not a good idea to capture on b5? Oh, okay, bishop c6, but queen b4. No, I think it's because the queen goes far from the e4 pawn, and after playing g5, we can play knight e4 or bishop e4. As for bishop c6, maybe, yeah. Oh, actually, no, we shouldn't play such a move. Knight b3 works as well, so maybe g5, then knight b3, and only then we capture on e4. That could make sense. Okay, so what is lagging? Please let me know. Okay, guys, for those who experience problems, yeah, actually, I'm streaming only now. Then the recording will be deleted. So for those who experience problems with the internet, you can watch on YouTube. Okay, so fine. Queen b5, of course, wasn't played on the board. Instead, bishop c2. E takes d4, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, c takes d4. By the way, here I have a question. What can you say about e5 with the idea to activate the queen and get it to h7? Queen g6, but queen g6, you sacrifice the pawn, I believe. For example, queen g6, queen takes g6, f takes g6, bishop takes g6, the rook is under attack. I don't think that rook e6 is a good move. Well, let's say rook f8 maybe in this position. Then something like knight d4 should be fine. Yeah, and this is how white is one pawn up. So queen g6 is not a good choice. Okay. So here Marcel is right. D takes e5 shouldn't be a problem. Queen h7, king f8. If queen h8 in this position, just king e7. And the problem is that the queen on h8 is hanging. So white has no time to capture on e5. If they do, we capture on e5. The enemy queen is hanging, so they can also capture with a check. And then knight goes to e5. And then, for example, d takes e3, and black is one pawn up. Björk, when queen e3? So at which moment you suggest queen e3? Queen e3 cannot be played. The pawn is on d4. When e4 is played. Wait. You mean queen e6, you mean? This move? Oh, I think it's not a good idea. So then check. King goes there. Queen h8, king e7, queen g7. So what can we say about this position? Wait, no. Then check here. That's much better. And then the queen is hanging with a check. So queen e6 is not good. So, but it's okay just to capture on e5 with the pawn after e4, e5. So that's why white didn't play such a move. They played c takes d4. But now they are really threatening with this move because e5 is well supported. There is a pawn on d4. What should you do if you were, what would you do if you were black in this position? Try to guess the next move that Josif Dorfman played on the board. Okay, knight c4. This is what Nimish suggested. What else? Oh, queen g6. Queen g6, queen b5, I think. Knight to c6. Well, queen e4 doesn't make much sense. Queen b5 anyway. c5. Okay, yeah. Keep suggesting moves, and I'll tell you about knight c4, which I think is a bad move. e5 is not the best response, but b3. And what? If knight goes back, then e5, of course. If knight goes there, then after queen c3, it looks like the knight is trapped. Oh, wait. Yeah, queen c3 can be played in this position. But queen b5 is another good move. So queen b5 just. The rook is under attack. Okay, so it looks like knight c4 is not a good choice and doesn't work. So for guys who just entered the webinar, Please find the move that black should play. White's threat is so obvious. They want to play e4, e5, then queen h7, and the e5 square is well supported. So, for example, we play a useless move like bishop b7, and then we get e5. If now we take, queen comes to h7, king f8, and the next move, I believe, is knight e5 or rook e5. Yeah, knight e5 looks good, threatening with this move. And queen h8 as well, because if king goes to e7, there will be a double check with knight c6, what leads to a checkmate, or almost to a checkmate. So this is the problem and the real threat. So how to deal with it, how to prepare for e5. Well, bishop d4 is just a bishop sacrifice, as well as bishop e4. What else? So for those who is watching the webinar on YouTube, you can also join our discussion and enter the room. The link was just sent. Okay, so knight c6, but what knight c6 does? This is how you want to... Okay, so this is how you want to stop e5. Okay, I believe I can still play e5, d takes e5, queen h7, king f8. And then what can I do? I can capture on e5 with my pawn. And if you capture here, I play queen h8. King e7 has to be played. And now rook e5. So what? You have to take as black. Then I capture on e8 first, king e8, and knight takes e5. White is with extra piece. So no, it's not in our favor. It's not in black favor. Okay. Yes, this is hard to find the move. It was definitely not knight c6, not knight c4, and not queen g6. E5 is a threat. So Josif Dorfman played g5. Can you imagine it? This is how he starts the counter attack. What does he counter attack? Actually, yes, he wants to threaten the king as well, but this is how he protects the h8 square with the queen. So queen h7 is not so dangerous, while queen h8 is not the option. The other thing is that we threaten g4 because this is how we can weaken the d4 square. For example, if queen captures b5, we can play bishop. No, the rook is under attack, so we have to play bishop c6 first. Queen goes to e2, for example, or doesn't really matter where. g4, knight escapes. Then we capture on d4, which is a double attack. So we actually attack on b2 because f2 is protected now. But white wants to capture on g4 with a check. We're down a pawn, but then escape with the king and still threaten to capture one of these two pawns. Of course, they defend the one on f2, but we capture on b2. And let's sum it up. So here the number of pawns is equal. We may create a passed pawn on the c file. Later in the game, our king is... yes, the king is quite weak. However, there is no concrete solution for white that can allow them to start a strong attack on our king. And black also has a bishop pair, which is another benefit. And I would say black is slightly better here. So okay, so g5 once again. Here intermediate master told to play this move, but I don't understand the point. Just queen b5. So g5. Dorfman's move is much better. Queen b5 was just analyzed. If e5 in this position, what do you think black should play? Should black capture on e5, or maybe black can find a better move? What do you think? D takes a5, queen g7. No, come on, queen g7 is too passive. Yeah, it's too passive. Yeah, this move can be played, of course, but it's too passive. Oh, the question was if should we capture on e5 now, or should we play something else? No, queen g6 loses the pawn on g6. No, queen g6, queen takes queen, then bishop takes pawn. Okay, so actually, yes, here we can capture on f3 with our bishop. And then white realizes that the queen is not under attack anymore. No, it's not hanging right now because rook takes rook. And then after queen f1, we have a minor piece, an extra minor piece. For example, g takes f3, then d takes f5. This defender, the knight on f3 was removed. Queen h7, king f8, and we are one pawn up. Okay, so let's go through this line, which I think is so there is nothing to analyze. Queen g6 doesn't work. If rook e6, bishop f5 just. Rook has to go back and what? At least for now, black is a pawn down. No, let's say bishop e4. Trade the bishops and save the good. Oh, actually, no, let's keep the bishop here. Oh, let's say knight d2. If bishop takes f3, then just one knight replaces the other one. So queen g6 is not the good move, but bishop f3 works. So e5, of course, wasn't played. And this is where white started to defend his position. He played h3. Knight c6. e5 doesn't work. Black has enough defenders, and queen h7 is not a threat anymore. That's why queen b5. And now, what do you think black should do? Rook b8. Yes, exactly. So knight d4 cannot be played because the rook is hanging. This is a kind of a pin. That's why rook b8. e5 was played on the board. And then d takes e5, d takes e5. And now we came to a critical position where I again ask you, what should black play here? Yeah, black still experienced some problems. Their queen is under attack. They lost the pawn on b5, but what can they do? Bishop f2? Oh, wait a sec. So by playing bishop f2, you sacrifice the bishop, and your queen is hanging as well. So you take the queen, your queen is taken, but the bishop was sacrificed. It doesn't work. What else can you suggest? Okay, guys, yes, you are absolutely right. Here we can play queen f3. Why? Because we sacrifice the bishop and gain his queen. So queen f3, what he has to play? If he tries something like that, sacrificing the queen for a bishop, then we can do what? We can capture, actually, which is good. We can capture on g2 as well. I don't know what exactly is better, but maybe let's go through this line and then just rook b2. And black is fine. However, maybe in this position knight d4 makes more sense, threatening to take on f3 and c2. So bishop e4, knight f3, bishop takes f3, because then b2 is lost anyway. Okay, fine. So no, queen b6 doesn't work, so g takes f3. This is, sorry, here, g takes f3, bishop f2 check, king has to take, rook b5. Now this is 4 against 4, so black has 4 pawns, white has 4 pawns, but both e5 and b2 are hanging, so bishop e4 was played, not to blunder the... No, they sacrificed one of the pawns, actually, so rook b2 with a check, king escapes, then bishop b7, so the bishop is protected, there is no more pin, the knight can go anywhere. And finally, black was able to take the advantage of the extra pawn. So, for example, this is what happened in the game. We don't need to analyze the endgame. In this position, black is strategically winning. Their task is not to make a blunder. So king f5, it was another pawn sacrifice. And finally, in a few moves, white resigned in this position. So even if he sacrifices 2 minor pieces for 2 pawns, black can still win because they can checkmate with bishop and knight. What you should remember from this game? First of all, let's look at this position. Yes, e5 looks like a real threat, but the problem of white's attack is that they don't have enough material to support. Only the queen and probably the rook through the e-file. Their combination won't work if we can cover either h7 or h8 square with our pieces. That's why we play this move, which is also an attacking move because we threaten with g4. So we are okay even to lose the pawn on b5, because then after bishop c6 and g4, we gain the pawn back on d4. Then we are fine with this position. So g5 was not only defensive move, but the move that created a counterattack and forced white to defend. However, by the first glance, it's obvious that white king is pretty safe. However, if we threaten the knight and capture on d4, here not g4 but bishop c6, queen e2. So if we capture on d4, then the f2 is hanging, and this is the problem. If this pawn won't be hanging, then I would say white is better. So Berg, I don't understand your question. Wouldn't pawn g3 also protect queen h7? Ah, you mean not g5 but g6? Yes, g6 prevents the queen from coming to h7, but the problem is that there is no counterattack after this move. You are not threatening, so bishop c6, he goes back to d3, for example, and you are not threatening with g4, so you can't capture and gain the pawn back. That's the problem. Okay, fine. Let me close it because we have at least 2 games to analyze today. I think 2 games will be enough. So the next game we are going to cover is the game played between Frank Marshall and Akiba Rubinstein. This is an interesting game. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight a3, c5. So this is Tarrasch defense. Black is okay to play with isolated pawn. And this is what actually happened in the game. So you see here, rook c1 was played to support the pawn on c5. Castle, bishop f6. Now this bishop from e7 no longer attacks c5, it's already on f6. And white continues their development. e3, queen a5, threatening to take the pawn, but a3. And what if queen c5 in this position? What do you think white should do? No, knight e4 doesn't make much sense. So knight e4, queen e7. And black is actually a number of pawns is equal. But knight b5 could make sense. Knight b5, queen b6, and then knight goes to c7. But the b2 is hanging. So knight goes here, bishop captures b2, and knight a8, queen a5 check. Here knight d2. Bishop takes c1, queen takes c1, and after knight a6, knight c6. The knight is trapped and black is actually fine. So probably after bishop b2, rook c2 has to be played. But then bishop go here, knight takes e8, queen a5, knight d2, knight c6. And black has a compensation. Oh, of course, this knight dies. Black has a compensation for the exchange sacrifice. They have bishop plus 2 pawns versus rook. So it's still okay. But black decided queen c5 is too risky because of knight b5. And instead, they just played the knight to c6 with the idea of capturing c5 later. Bishop d3, queen c5. So why they should go into these complications if they can capture on c5 in a much safer position? h4 was played by white, so this is how white initiates the attack. Queen e7, knight g5. So for example, in this position, bishop h7 was a mistake. King h7. Knight g5. What do you think we should do to successfully defend? Oh, bishop takes g5, h takes g5, and now rook joins the attack. King g8, okay, and so king g8, and if now king g6 can be played as well, but queen h5, how to deal with it? What do you think? Yeah, bishop f5, right, but if you play bishop f5, knight d5 is a kind of a problem. So that's why first you should capture on c3 with a check. So let's say rook captures, and then you play bishop f5, and there is no compensation for the bishop sacrificed on h7. So that's why They played knight g5. They didn't sacrifice on h7 right now. Then h6, knight takes e6, f takes e6, and bishop b1. So white actually played almost well. They played bishop b1, and the idea of such a move is to take the advantage of the light squares being weakened on the king side. This is a typical strategy for the middle game with bishops of opposite color. If you don't know how to play a middle game with bishops of opposite color, then the best plan is to initiate the attack on the enemy king, try to create weaknesses, weak squares that are of the same square as your bishop. For example, here white weakened the king side. These h7, g6 are now weak, and they are trying to penetrate into the king side with their queen, with queen d3 or queen c2, and so on. But the problem is that the king standing on e1 is also weak for white in this position, and this is where black may start their counterplay. So now I'm waiting for your suggestions. No, the idea of bishop b1 is obvious, queen d3 and queen h7. So it doesn't make sense to locate the bishop on g6 because the queen should go first. That's why they located the bishop behind the queen. So queen d3 is likely to be the next move. What should we do? Now, Vishy suggests g5. No, g5 is too risky. You open the h file, so they just take. Yes, you are unlikely to get a checkmate in a few moves, but you weaken the position too much. Then e6. What do you mean by saying e6? Knight e5, knight e5, and if queen c2. E5. Now e5, you blunder on d5, so it won't work. Bishop takes c3. Okay, bishop takes c3, rook takes c3, and then bishop c3. Okay, bishop c3, rook c3, and then, for example, queen f6, threatening to take on f2 is okay for black. And that could be played, but Akiba Rubinstein played better. It's bishop h4 that you suggested. His idea is to attack on f2. So, for example, queen d3, then bishop f2 check, king e2, queen g5, queen h7, king f7, king takes f2, king e7, king g1. No, he has to protect the g2 pawn. It's the most important pawn in this position for white. So that's why he gives up the pawn on e3, king h2, queen e5 check, and then rook comes into the attack. So rook f3 is such a weird move, but it works. Queen comes back, queen e3 check, and rook f4 with the idea of playing rook h4. This is how black wins. Now, of course, white realized that queen d3 cannot be played. The f2 pawn is too important. That's why they played g3. What to do then? What do you think? Oh, wait, queen f7. No, queen f7, queen c2. Okay, while you're thinking, let me answer the question. For example, why After rook f3, the rook cannot be taken. This is actually a good question, but if the rook is taken, then queen g3, king f1, queen f3, king e1. If king e1, then queen h1 with a strong attack. After that, if king goes to g1, then this move, king goes there, check, rook joins the game, king goes there, another check, king goes there, for example. Doesn't really matter where. It's either queen f3 or queen f3. He goes there, check, and the checkmate on d2. So now if king e1 here, then so in this line we capture here, he goes there. Then I think we just take. He has to go to d2, not to blunder the second rook. But this is a winning position. For example, here, if king d1, then just rook f8 wins the game. Okay, let me finish it. So knight e2, check, king goes there, check, king takes, queen takes e2, queen takes g7, king d6. It's a winning because of several extra pawns. So rook f3 was actually a clever move in this position, but this is what I analyzed. I'm not sure if Akiba Rubinstein saw that. So g3. And the best move is to sacrifice the bishop. F takes g3. Queen g5. Oh, black definitely has a full compensation for the bishop sacrificed. Here, for example, knight e2 offered approximately equal chances. But queen d3 was played. He decides to sacrifice the pawn on g3. Why I recommend playing this move? It's because after this move, for example, knight e5 looks like an absolutely winning move. The knight comes to f3, and then any discovered attack can be applied. But the problem is that then just rook c3, and after knight f3, king goes to f2, and there is no good discovered attack. The king either goes to g2 or knight on f4 blocks this check. So black couldn't get any benefits here. Maybe Frank Marshall was afraid of this discovered attack with knight f5 and knight f3, but he played queen d3. What do you think black should do in this position? Because this is where Akiba Rubinstein made a mistake. Knight e5 looks like a good move here and probably can be played. But there is a better option. So actually, Akiba Rubinstein played queen g3 and lost the game quickly. Wait a sec, something wrong happened with chess base. Queen g3 was played on the board. Knight e5 could be a good move. Then queen h7, for example. King f7, rook checks, king goes there. Knight e2. Rook takes rook, check with the other rook. Knight f4, queen g3. So it looks like black is winning, but white finds another attacking resource, which is this. King d6. And then queen g7. So, and in this position, only rook f4 allows black to make a draw by a perpetual check, like that. So they just keep checking on e3 or f3. For example, if here the king goes, well, let me explain, because it's a really difficult position. So if king goes to the king side, we keep checking him, like that. And if here white blocks with the queen, we just capture the rook on c7. So they have to repeat the position like that. If king h5, it's even a checkmate on h2. That's why he has to go back, and we just repeat with queen f3 and so on. If the king goes to the other side of the board, queen f3 check, d2, again another check. He tries to escape through c2, but we just repeat the position like that. If he goes to the b file, queen b6, and we capture the rook with our queen, and we are winning. If not, we just repeat the position and deliver a perpetual check. So it means that knight e5 was a good move. That at least could offer a draw if white plays properly. But there was a better move. It was rook f5. Such a move that prevents this battery attack. For example, then knight e2 to protect on g3, knight e5. And now if queen moves, we can play rook f3. Oh, for example, rook f3. Then if rook f1, we just trade rooks. Or actually, we can capture... No, that's a blunder. If we capture on e3, we blunder queen c8, queen d8, and queen e6. That's definitely not in our favor. So yeah, we first have to trade. Then check and come with our rook to f3 again. If, for example, here not queen c3 but queen b3 with the idea to attack on b7, we are ready to sacrifice the other pawn, but to join all of our pieces to the attack. And at least there will be at least a perpetual check. Okay, let's go back. So rook f5 was a good move. However, Akiba Rubinstein played queen g3. King d2, rook f2, knight blocks now. Now he tries knight e5, queen h7, king f7, rook c7, king f6, and now he loses the game immediately. What do you think? What white should do to win the game quickly? Yes, you're absolutely right. Rook takes h6. And what to do? If pawn moves or pawn captures, it's just queen e7, mate. You see, the bishop on b1 controls the g6 and f5 squares. Queen e7 mate. If after rook h6 they block, maybe it doesn't make much sense, so rook g6 and the game is over. All right, so this is how he lost the game, but could win or at least play a strong attack if only in this position he plays a rook f5. Well, let's go back and discuss. So here, the pawn h4. Oh, so first, bishop b1 starts the attack for white because they want to play queen d3, queen h7 then. which is quite dangerous. White is not a castle, so it can be regarded as the benefit for white because the rook can work through the h file. But at the same time, after bishop h4, which is usually dangerous because it opens the h file, but in this position not, because black can successfully attack the king standing in the center. So g3 has to be played to prevent any attack on f2, but then even bishop g3, f takes g3, and queen g5 works. And now white is in trouble and has to play only moves to be able to draw the game, like knight e2 or queen d3 and then knight e2. So the king on e1 was in a bad position, and that was a chance for black to start their counter attack with bishop h4 threatening to take on f2. I think after g3, Frank Marshall wasn't ready for bishop takes pawn on g3. Okay, fine. So we have one more game to analyze today. And this is actually the game of my favorite player, Garry Kasparov. He played against Alexander Beliavsky. The game is quite old. It was played in 1988. But let's analyze it. It was Grunfeld defense played there. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, and d5. So if, for example, bishop g7, e4, and d6, this is King's Indian defense. But if queenside fiancetta with d5 move, it's Grunfeld defense. Oh, the idea of this position and this opening is obvious, which is actually, no, this is quite a popular openings nowadays. I'm not a fan of it, but I know that many masters and grandmasters prefer playing Grunfeld rather than something else. So here, for example, e4 looks like white control the center, but then black tries to undermine it with c5 move. Oh, knight e2, so on, then castle on knight c6. And so white looks like white dominates, but black has a clear plan to attack the center or to undermine the center with the pawns and then attack these weak pawns because the bishop on g7 is really strong here. So knight c6 can also join the attack. Okay, fine. Let's go back. So after d5, knight f3 was played by Alexander Beliavsky, bishop g7, queen b3, which is quite a popular line, but was a popular line that time, but nowadays is considered not to be the best option because of d takes c4 and the queen has to move one more time. Castle, e4, knight a6. The idea of such a move is just to support c5. Why not knight d7? Because we just didn't want to block the bishop and also to block the queen. Okay, guys, there is a question for you. What would you do if white in this position plays e5? Bishop e6 and knight d5. No, yeah, of course not knight g4. Knight g4 can be attacked with the pawn, for example, or at least you give up the center. You give up the center. So yes, e5, bishop e6. If queen b5, you can play this move, and the pawn is not hanging because after knight takes b4, you have a strong attack with c5 move. If here he goes to a4, then it's fine. Just knight d5 and bishop a6. Of course, they gain a pawn, but after knight b4, we have a compensation. I'll show you. So, for example, queen a4, c5, castle, and bishop d7. At least we can repeat the position. So, queen b3, bishop e6, queen a4, bishop d7. Because if they go to d1, we can just capture. And no, queen can't take because of c2 square that has to be protected, but the knight can capture. However, then bishop e5, and black is better because of the bishop pair. So actually bishop e6 and knight d5 is a good strategy here. That's why actually e5 wasn't played. Bishop e2. Okay, when do you lose a piece? Can you please explain? So here, e5, bishop e6. No, d5 cannot be played because knight takes d5. Or bishop takes d5, actually. Black has enough defenders. Okay, so bishop a2 was played. c5 to undermine the center. D takes c5 is still a bad idea because of bishop e6. For example, then queen b5. And what do you think black should do here? Oh, queen c7, so to protect everything. I didn't analyze such move. I don't remember why. Maybe queen c7, bishop e3 is okay. Or, yeah, bishop e3 looks fine. No, definitely not before. Queen c7, then... then c6 works. Because if queen c6, queen takes c6, and the bishop, the knight is hanging here, with the bishop can capture. So not queen c7. Rook c8. And if now c6, then just rook c6. And if he captures here, we have a tactical strike with rook c3, b takes c3, and then knight c5. First, queen captures, the knight is under attack, but after knight e4, so we are down the exchange, but we have a full compensation because of our pieces. So, for example, what can happen then? Castle, knight takes, threatening the bishop on e2. Bishop escapes. To b5, if now we take on b5, then he takes here. So knight takes b5, they capture on c5, we capture on a1, they capture on b5, and they have actually fine. But there is a better move, just knight b3. And after a takes b3, the pawn on b3 becomes the object of the attack. We can't take this pawn immediately because of bishop h6, but after f6, the pawn becomes the object of the attack, and black is slightly better. If, for example, he captures on b7, then, yes, knight c5, we sacrifice the pawn, knight goes to d3, bishop takes, queen e3. What can you suggest in this position for black? Black is 2 pawns down, but he has a strong initiative if you find a good move. No, knight g4, but wait, what are you talking about? Your queen is hanging. Rook fd8 offers a trade of the queens, and then white is effectively 2 pawns up. Rook c3. No, rook c3, b takes c3. What's the idea? Okay. No, guys, it's just queen to a6. With queen a6, we control the diagonal and prevent them from castling. And now we have a clear plan. Rook f to d8, rook d3. Also, knight g4 can be played to threaten on c3. This is how we can dominate in this position. At least one of these 2 pawns will be lost. And for the other one, we have a full compensation. Okay, fine. Let's go back. That was just a line if d takes c5. So people usually don't play d takes c5. They understand that white don't have any advantage there. They play d5. What exactly happened in this game? e6 to undermine it. Bishop g5, pinning it. E takes d5. Knight takes d5, but bishop e6 with the intention to trade the bishop for a knight. Castle. Bishop d5. Rook takes d5. Queen b6. Getting rid of this pin. In this position, something like bishop d2 was good, or not bishop, but rook d2, just to protect on b2. But they decided to trade. The b2 is still hanging. e5, queen f5, bishop d3, queen goes to c8. And in this position, there was a better option for white. It was to play rook d6, which was a good move. After that, the position is unclear, maybe approximately equal, with equal chances to succeed. But rook d1 was played by Alexander Beliavsky. And what do you think black should do in this position? No, knight before just rook c5. So if you play such a move, oh, so knight go there, rook takes c5, and then what? You want to capture on a2? Okay, I'm fine with it. Just king b1. The knight is hanging, the queen is hanging as well. Black is losing. Queen e6, what for? Maybe queen e6, knight g5 can be played. Now, come on, guys. There is a simple move that offers a counterplay for black. Bishop h6, king b1. Okay, so guys, yes, you're Anton and John and Roland are correct. It's b5. The idea of such a move is that the pawn cannot be taken because of knight c7. And queen c5 doesn't work. Just knight d5 without a rook because the queen is pinned. So here probably queen d7, knight takes d5, queen takes d5. So it was white lost their exchange, captured 1 pawn. So there is no enough compensation for the exchange that was lost. And black is better. However, they have to play several moves to realize that black is definitely better in this position. So, of course, white decided not to capture on b5. They played queen h4, which is a good move. And then knight b4, fork. So something like rook d6 could be played in this position. So for example, rook d6, c4, then bishop e4, and c3 with a strong attack. This is what Alexander Beliavsky was afraid of, I believe. And he decided that with queen h4 and knight from f3 going to g5, he may succeed. That's why he played this move, which was a mistake, but required black to play only proper move. Several proper moves. So how to react on bishop g6 actually? So f takes g6. Okay. Oh, yes. F takes g6. That's right. Because if h takes g6, just knight g5 and queen h7 is a strong threat. So f takes g6, but then rook d7. How to play then? No, because white intends to play queen e7. What should we do? Rook takes f3. Wait, rook f3, I see what you mean. So rook takes f3. And if queen e7, queen f8. No, guys, you can't play like that. Just rook d8. No, okay. Okay, no, let me take first. And then rook d8 on the next move. And that should be a winning position for me, for white. So rook d7, no. Knight c6 doesn't work. If knight c6 is played, then, for example, what? Knight g5 maybe? Yeah, knight g5 looks good. And h6 doesn't work, of course, because of knight e6. So after rook d7, the only move that I see is queen e8. Rook e7 was played. How would you continue in this position as black? How to initiate a counterplay? Queen c6. If you play queen c6, I think rook d6 is a good move. So let me show you. No, not knight, of course. Queen c6. Then rook d6 probably. And then knight g5. Rook f4. Oh, rook f4 looks better, but if you play rook f4, I capture here with a check. You can't capture my queen. What else? Yes, John is correct. It's bishop h6. The idea of distraction works. So if queen captures, then the e7 rook is lost. That's why king b1 has to be played. John, and what now? Oh, yeah, actually, Aaron is correct as well. Yes, right. And now, no, queen c6. Now queen c6, of course, makes sense, but there is something wrong with this move, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, exactly. So, for example, rook d6, and where do you move the queen? And after you move the queen, I can capture on h6. So queen c6 is a mistake. The best move in this position is rook d8. This is how black tries to counterattack. So, for example, rook takes queen, rook takes rook mate. And queen h6 doesn't work. After rook d8, no, they played this move. Looks like our queen on e8 is trapped. What do you think we should do? Rook takes rook, but then pawn takes. And what do you suggest? So Stan suggests rook takes d6, e takes d6, and then? Okay, let's go through this line. Then I believe queen c8 forces a draw with queen f5 idea, and then checkmate. But after d7, queen goes to c6, queen goes to c6. No, queen goes to a6, threatening checkmate. So a3 has to be played, but queen a4, offering a perpetual check, should be fine. For example, queen h6, queen c2, king a1, queen go there, even the mate. So that's why here they have to capture on b4, and then we just give a perpetual check like that. So that only offered a draw for Garry Kasparov, but he realized that he can successfully escape with the queen to c6. And now if rook captures, it's still a mate on the back rank. Queen c6, a3 was played. Rook takes d6, e takes d6, and queen takes d6. He sacrifices a piece back. He is several pawns up. Oh, actually, right, one pawn right now, but he's gonna capture a few more. So the bishop is not hanging because the rook is. In such a case, white played queen e4, b3, threatening the mate on the back rank, knight d4. No, queen e6 to pass the game into the endgame was a big mistake, because then, for example, rook c8, and the only way to avoid the checkmate on c1 is to get the rook back, but after rook c2, the position is winning. White loses several pawns on the second rank. Maybe the f2, but this pawn is, the b2 is more likely. It's absolutely winning for black. That's why knight d4, blocking the queen. Rook f4, queen checks, bishop blocks. Now rook goes to e4, and after rook f2, white resigned, because there is no strong attack. There is no any attack on the enemy, on the black king, and the g2, h2 pawns are both hanging, while the king is also weak. So, for example, in this position, black is threatening with rook f1 mate. So this is actually an interesting game that I think is maybe the most beautiful, comparing to the games that we analyzed on recent webinars. So here I want you to understand the idea of this position. So here looks like black is in a trouble, but he finds a way how to counterattack, How did he understand that it's time to start the counterattack? He recognized that the king on c1 is also weak, while several white pieces are trying to attack. Only the rook on d1 defends the position of the king. So that's why bishop h6, threatening king moving to b, forcing the king moving to b1, weakens the back rank. That's why there is no need to save the queen immediately. We can occupy the d file and threaten with a counterplay through the d file. That was the idea, actually. And here, of course, he saw that after queen d6, he has several options, including taking on d6 and playing queen c8, but queen c6 is the best one because it also allows the queen to join the attack through e4 in case if they capture our bishop. No, for example, here, queen e4, if king goes there, it's a checkmate in one move. If king goes there, it's a smothered mate. No, it's not. It's just a mate on b1. Edward, I can't answer your question. So you ask me why engine doesn't like bishop h6. I think bishop h6 is the best move. Wait a sec. Okay, so here it's not stockfish, it's just a deep fritz, which is not so good. But let's ask what they say. Okay, actually bishop h6 is the best move. So you see, this is the analysis here. So bishop h6 is the best. So for example, who analyzed this position? Oh, yeah. So for example, Komoda analyzed this position on the 2nd of January in the depth of 24 moves. And yes, bishop h6, king b1, rook d8. This is the best option that Komoda found. There is no stockfish, but I believe stockfish would say the same thing. Looks like the engine also likes this move. Okay, guys, so what do you think? Do you have any questions? How did you like the webinar? Did I explain how to counterattack? The program that I use, this is ChessBase. So as for the next webinar that I'm going to conduct next Sunday, it will be a simul. It will be a simul, and I'm going to play with 30 plus 30. I'm going to accept only 12 players because 15 is really much. So if you want, maybe I can ask my colleague, also a FIDE master, to join the simul and to play with those who still want to play, but okay, anyway. So do you want anybody to help me with the simul or not? However, I'm not sure if I will be able to comment all the games. I think only my games. And yes, to participate, you should register. By saying register, it means, I mean, you should send just an email that you want to participate. So the first 12 people gonna play with me and maybe other with the other player. To my email, yes, I didn't provide you with my email, which is tricksofchess@gmail.com. So you can also, any suggestions you can send to this email. If you're looking for private or for group lessons, you can also ask about the rates there. So the recording of this webinar will be available for maybe a few more hours, and then I'm going to delete it. So good luck, please watch it. And what I'll definitely leave it. I'll definitely leave it on this group. I'm going to show you. I think I leave it only in this group, which is Tricks of Chess. So join it. So why I don't want to publish the recordings of these webinars to YouTube? Because in such a case, people, instead of attending my webinar right now, decide to watch the recording later, then they forget, or they have some other things to do, and so that's why my webinars are not so helpful for them, because they just can't find the time to watch them. So that's why I suggest the best thing is to attend the webinar in live. Okay, if you have any suggestions, don't hesitate to ask. Also about the group lessons, I said if you are interested in my courses, you can visit my website. Actually, after the end of the webinar, you will be redirected to it. Where you can find my courses. So some of them are devoted to tactics. I also, there was a opening about Can-Sicilian. I also created several openings with the chessworld.com. The several courses devoted to openings with the chessworld.com. And you can also contact me by email and I'll tell you about them. So, for example, there I covered Can-Sicilian, semi-Slav defense, English opening with black pieces, how to play against knight f3, yes, and Catalan with white pieces. Okay, thank you, and hope to see you on my next webinar.